Well, hi everyone. I'm here with my friend and colleague Ellen Bader from couplesinstitute.com. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Casey.
It's so great to see you. I'm very excited to be here with you today. And we're going to be talking today about now what? Managing the betrayal of an affair. And I also want to, in a little bit, talk about how people can get better training as couples therapists. I don't want to do that yet, but I want to make sure. Can you help me remember if I don't?
Sure.
Okay, great. So let's get started. What do you see as some of the biggest issues when a couple's coming in with an affair?
So first of all, the most typical way couples come in is when the affair has just been revealed. So they come in experiencing a crisis and often want to make very impulsive, quick, premature decisions, or the other side is they want to get over it way too fast. And so when a couple is dealing with issues of infidelity, it challenges the therapist in terms of our own thinking, our own way we deal with issues like that in our own lives. And also it has multi-levels of challenge to the couple themselves.
So let's talk about just some ideas first. How prevalent are affairs?
So nobody knows for sure, and there have been a lot of statistics bannered around. The most common one is that 50% of all marriages will experience an affair sometime in the lifetime of the marriage. And the other statistic that seems pretty true is that more men than women will have affairs, but the number of women is increasing.
And as I hear that, I just wonder about self-report. If it's easier for a man to report having had an affair than a woman. And so maybe, I don't know, I just had a thought on that.
Well, nobody knows how honest people are when they do the reporting, and so it's very, very hard to tell for sure.
So let's talk about...
Let's just say they're very prevalent in American culture.
Okay. And do you know if it's as prevalent in other cultures or more so?
I think it's vastly different in cultures around the world. There are some cultures where affairs are not seen as a huge reflection on the marriage. It's not, in French culture, for example, for many years, mistresses were not uncommon. In cultures where people get stoned to death if they have affairs, they're probably a lot less common.
So how do we define affairs? What is an affair?
So the way I think of it, an affair is actually any either sexual or flirting or amorous incident between two people who aren't married to each other.
Okay, so I hear a lot about internet affairs.
Well, let me define one other thing first, if I could, Casey, which is infidelity, because the words infidelity and affair often get used interchangeably. And I think of infidelity is actually a betrayal of loyalty or trust when there's a reason to expect otherwise.
Can you speak more about that?
Sure. So let's take American culture for now. And in American culture, when people get married and say, I do, there's an expectation of monogamy. And it's also an equilateral decision. It's a decision. Nowadays, we aren't in arranged marriages in the West. We don't have dowries. It's two people who decide together to get married. And women in particular have fought hard for a kind of equality. And so we have essentially, two people equally making the decision to get married. And then when an affair comes along, it's a unilateral decision, usually made by one person. Now, it wouldn't be infidelity if one partner said to the other, I'd like to have an affair with so-and-so, and the other one consents to it. Or if two people agree on an open marriage, then it's not infidelity.
Okay, so in this talk, we're really talking about infidelity, where one person broke the contract that both had agreed to.
Correct.
Okay, great. And this is not just from a marriage. This could also be from any kind of relationship, too, right?
Yeah, but we're talking about primarily when two people have a committed partnership,
right?
And there's an assumption, there's a reasonable reason to expect monogamy.
Exactly. Okay, so I want to be a couples therapist for a minute. I'm sitting in the room, and the couple comes in, and there's been an affair reported. Now, my personal experience, as I wrote about in the newsletter, was that I'd been doing couples therapy with this couple for a long time, and then I thought they were both trying to work on the marriage. He had said he was not involved in the affair anymore, but he was. And that came out, and I had a lot of countertransference toward that. Not affairs are bad. I didn't have that kind of countertransference, but I had the countertransference that he was lying to me. So I was all discombobulated, and I didn't know what to do. So is it different on what we should do based on where they are in their treatment with us?
So first of all, you're asking a very complex question, which I'd like to back up a little bit on first, which is when a couple comes in and there's been an affair revealed, right at that point, the couples therapist has a lot of decisions to make. But one of the important decisions to make is how am I going to deal with finding out what's really going on here? And one of the best ways to do that is to have an individual session with each partner. However, as soon as you have an individual session with each partner, then you have the issue of how do you manage secrets? And the issue of how a therapist manages secrets creates an incredible amount of anxiety for most therapists, or many, many therapists. And also, it takes a lot of soul searching to figure out what your own policy is. In fact, the standard line for so long was never see anybody individually, and then you won't have that issue. Then Janice Spring came along and wrote the book After the Affair, and she talks about an open secrets policy.
Excuse me, I don't know what open secrets policy means.
Okay, so what she does with a couple is she's very clear in the first session or early sessions that she would like to meet with them separately as part of her ability to know what's going on, and that she wants them to know that she will hold confidential anything that either one of them tells her in the individual session. And so it's open knowledge to both people that it is possible that she would hold a secret.
That was my little countertransference kind of thing right there, because...
What was your countertransference?
Well,
right there?
I've been client where a therapist had said that.
You have been?
Yeah, it wasn't an affair, but it was a therapist had said, I'm going to keep an open secrets policy. And it honestly was a little bit hard for me to trust the therapist because I didn't know what was happening on the other end of that. So as client, it was scary.
Right.
So, and then I've been on the therapist side of it too, where I've known information about one partner and I hadn't really been clear enough about it up front. And then what do I do with that? So bless you for helping people learn how to be better couples therapists is all I can say.
Well, let me tell you what I've come to after many, many years. But I think coming to this has also been based somewhat on trying to really refine my diagnostic skills well. So my policy now is that I don't have a policy. However, what I do is, this is what I do most of the time, is I ask the couple to decide. And I ask them to decide in front of me and to have a discussion in front of me in which they decide and discuss whether what goes on in the individual sessions will be held private or not.
And what's been your experience with that?
So some couples actually do it quickly and are comfortable saying, yes, it's okay to keep it confidential. And they both have things they actually want to say to me about the other one that they don't really want to be said. In some couples, what it does is it exposes the fact that there's ongoing lies still going on. And so it creates an enormously stressful conversation. But sometimes it helps to bring out into the open that the whole truth has not been told.
So I just want to back up and make sure that what we're talking about right now is when a couple comes in having had an affair, and that's the crisis?
Well, an affair has been revealed. Often, this is not always the case, but often when an affair is revealed, a couple comes very soon after that, and it's when an affair is revealed, it shatters one person's reality. And it's experienced very much as a crisis because all of a sudden there's this giant question of who are you? I thought I knew you. Now I don't know you. Who are you really? And who am I? Like, how am I going to handle this? Am I going to tell you to get out and never speak to you again? Um, one of the most extreme situations I saw was a couple where when he knew about her, when he learned about her affair, he stopped talking to her and he never talked to her again for 7 years. So
Yeah.
everything was done through lawyers. He would not speak a word to her afterwards. So there was no possibility of them working it through or doing anything together.
But what I understand is that many marriages survive affairs. Is that correct?
Not only do many marriages survive, but many marriages are stronger afterwards. And in fact, I like working with couples where infidelity has been revealed. Not that I like the pain, and I don't like sitting with the pain, and I don't like somebody being so hurt and angry, but it's highly motivating. And it's highly motivating to do things that would have been well better done many years before that. So, I mean, I think lots of people could affair proof their marriages if they would do more effective differentiation with each other in the early stages of their marriage, but they don't. And so patterns of deadness set into marriages because they don't do that. And then the affair happens often.
Can you speak more about that? If they don't do the differentiation, patterns of deadness creep in?
Yeah, I mean, when couples don't differentiate, there's really one of two avenues that happen. One is that they become incredibly angry and hostile and competitive with each other and nasty, and so they trigger enormous amounts of pain through their nastiness with each other. But a very, very other common pattern is significant conflict avoidance and significant intimacy avoidance. Mm-hmm. And so those couples develop patterns where they aren't known to each other, where they don't risk, where there's no intensity. Life in those couples can become very companionate, but the relationship is pretty dead. People don't experience a sense of aliveness in those relationships.
Okay, so now that I'm feeling sad, what do we do, ELlyn? What do we do?
Well, who's the we?
Okay, we as clinicians.
Okay, well, I mean, we as clinicians learn how to work really well with affairs. That's number one. We learn to tolerate intensity. We learn how to take people into very difficult conversations that they would choose not to have with each other. We're able to support and confront both partners. And often, there's a tendency to align with, quote, the victim and let the victim kind of get off the hot seat of any looking at themselves. Right. On the other hand, you don't want to blame the, quote, victim. So there's a lot of confrontation with a partner who had an affair around, what is this affair really about in your life? Does it mean more about you? Does it mean more about the marriage? What were the reasons that it was okay with you to lie? Particularly if there's a lot of lies of commission rather than just omission. How is it that you can look your partner straight in the eyes and lie to them? How is that okay with you? And what did you experience when you were doing that?
Is it possible that because of the deadness that you just talked about, or because we might have a partner that is more access to borderline, that lying is actually the safer course of action?
Well, so that's another good complicated question because the safer course of action for somebody to lie may be because they haven't developed the emotional muscle themselves to tell the truth, and so they say it's because of their partner, but it's really more because of them. On the other hand, if they're married to a borderline who rages a lot, then they may think it's a lot safer. And there are some affairs that take place out of a desire to save the marriage and to actually have a lot of loyalty to the marriage and to create that sense of aliveness somewhere else and still remain loyal to the marriage. So in that case, then the lying serves a very important function. However, anytime somebody lies directly to the partner, looking them in the eyes and lying to them, and then especially, this is where it gets worse, if the partner says, is there someone else, or are you having an affair, and they say no, once that line has been crossed, the partner who's suspecting will feel crazy. Their mental health is really put into question. And that's a pretty lethal process in a marriage that takes a lot of careful work from the therapist to help undo that.
So I've heard both sides of this, where some people will say, well, then the betrayed partner needs to hear every gory detail about everything, every X-rated, everything, because they need to have all that to heal. And yet there's another part in my brain that says, once you get those pictures in your head, I mean, it just seems to me that that would be more traumatizing.
Right. So, here's another one where there's not one black and white answer. However, usually I like to think of it as the person who wants to know information. What's the motivation? What's the reason that they want to know the information? And there's a lot of good reasons to know information, not usually the gory sexual details, but there's a lot of, one of the big reasons for knowing the information is it's a way of recreating reality. It's a way of taking past events and saying, okay, I thought the world was this, but it was really this, and I don't know what this is over here, so now tell me so I can create a new reality. Another reason for knowing information is that it creates a boundary around our relationship again. Instead of you telling all my secrets and our secrets to the affair partner, now you're willing to reveal yourself to me. So that's another reason to know details. On the other hand, you're right. With when the details are specific sexual details, I would go back to that person and say, why are you asking? What's the motive? Are you asking if there's a kind of sexual experience your partner wants to have with you that they've never had with you, that they had with somebody else? Then let's talk about the kind of a sexual experience that they're after. There are some affairs that are recreations of early childhood sexual abuse, and maybe a partner's never told them about the sexual abuse. And so then you're talking about difficult stuff when you're talking about what happened to that person as a child and how this affair fits into that, and it may have almost nothing to do with the marriage.
So I'm just backing up and realizing yet again how much I don't know. And so I just want to, for a quick sec, talk about your online training.
Sure.
Because one of the things about these conferences is that I try to give as much information as we can. We offer them for free and to listen to the recordings for 24 hours at no charge. But I know that when you're sitting in the room and this thing happens to you, it's way different than trying to remember what ELlyn said on the talk. So tell us about your training just for a minute or so.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have two major commitments that I stand behind very strongly. One is that I want to create a core of very talented couples therapists around the world. And so that's one of the reasons why I started the online training program, and I'm really creating a community of therapists who are truly dedicated to being good couples therapists. So, and I also want to stop premature and unnecessary divorces. And I think unless therapists are really trained well to recognize differentiation when it's trying to happen and be able to support it, unless they're really skilled at dealing with the aftermath of an affair, for example. A lot of times we all mess up marriages, and so I do an online training program that has a combination of a lot of written lessons in it, time to be on the phone with me every month, and also time to interact on blogs about every possible subject related to couples work that you could ever imagine.
So the thing I like about it is that there's training, there's case consultation kind of information, there's interaction with you and interaction with peers.
Right, right.
ongoing. Where would people go to read about that?
So there's the most direct way to read about it, excuse me, is to go to coupleinstitutetraining.com/developmental model.
Okay, we'll put that in the resource center for everybody.
Okay, and can I give out one other link
Yes.
as well? Because so Pete and I created kind of a fun video called Chore Wars, which isn't about infidelity. It's about how you deal with issues when one person wants to get a lot of work done around the house and the other one wants to sit on their butt. So, but if people go there and look at it, because it's fun, and put in their name and email address, then they will get information also emailed to them from us about the training and some of the other things we provide. So you can go to that at www.coupleinstitute.com/CWBATW, which stands for Be a Wealthy Therapist. I mean, BAWT, sorry.
Right. We'll put it in the resource center, guys. Don't worry about that right now.
Okay.
Because I know that some people are like, what was that link? What was that link? It'll be in the chat. We'll put that in there, and we'll put it in the resource center. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. Now, a couple of other things I just want to ask you. Are there times when, okay, here's what I want to know. What do we do first when it's been, like you said, first we back up and we know what our policy is on secrets and things like that, number one. But what do we do when they walk in and they report it? And then the second thing, I forgot my second question. Let's go with my first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
what do we do?
What do you do right when they come in and tell you there's been an affair? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly.
Okay, so when that affair is revealed and they come in and they say that, one of the things I want to know initially is, what do they want my role to be? Okay. What are they looking to me for when they come in and tell me that? And it varies a lot. I mean, and sometimes it varies within the couple. So one partner in the couple might be saying, I want your role to be to help me save this marriage. And the other partner might be saying, I want you to help me get out of this marriage. And so then you have two very different roles that you're filling with each partner. So getting clear about if the therapist's role is important. Now, another thing I think that's important at the beginning is really to slow things down, because so often there's a desire to make very, very quick, very impulsive decisions, sometimes decisions that you can't easily go back on. And so I encourage people to slow down, be willing to come in at least for a few sessions and get an opportunity to figure out what they want and where they are, and not make those very, very impulsive decisions.
So back to, I just think that's such great advice, but I remember my next question, and that is, had a situation, client came in, I was seeing her as an individual. Okay, so it's slightly different, but I was seeing her as an individual, and she had had an affair, and she was struggling with whether she should tell her husband or not. And it was eating her alive, but I knew him because I had seen him a few times, and I just had this sense that if it was a one time she got drunk at a reunion and had sex with her high school boyfriend, and it was a 15-year marriage, nothing else had ever happened. She kept asking me my advice, and I didn't have advice. I had feelings that I didn't know what to do with.
So I would see that, first of all, as an internal conflict for her. The conflict is, should I tell or shouldn't I tell? And that none of us know. I mean, it's her conflict to resolve. And that's the kind of situation where I use a lot of Gestalt 2 chair work to help the person really sort through what their conflict is, why they would tell, why they wouldn't tell, and coming to an internal peace with that. I certainly don't think that everybody always has to tell, and sometimes in a situation like you're referring to, the marriage can go on and be fine without ever telling. On the other hand, if the partner is suspecting and asking and they're not telling, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it was just her guilt that was, really eating her alive. And her thought was, if I tell him, I won't feel guilty anymore. But my thought was, but now what happens?
Well, and in fact, this might be an opportunity for her to deal with her giant superego that may be too punitive with her.
Okay.
But again, it's you've got to like really sort it out with her. Get her into the two chairs for more than one session, and get her to really look at how are those two sides of her going to come to an internal place of acceptance, whichever way she goes.
So are there stages that we go through? By the way, that was extraordinarily helpful. Are there stages that we go through, ELlyn, with the couple? So it's like, it's the first crisis, they come in with the reveal, and then we've got to deal with all that, you know, hubbub of what's happening, and then trying to build the marriage. Are there stages that they kind of go through there?
So in a loose way, I would say there are three stages when you're dealing with the aftermath of an affair. One is the initial stage, which is handling the here and now, quote, crisis. So that's the handling of, you know, are we going to live together? Are we going to separate? Are we going to be in therapy? Aren't we going to be in therapy? Are you going to reveal and answer questions or not? So there's a lot of stuff in that first stage that's just really very much crisis management. The second stage is where the hard work happens. And that's the stage of each person really doing a lot of self-examination. It's developing an enormous ability to be different with each other than they were before. And unless they develop that ability to be different with each other than they were before, then there's an affair waiting to happen all over again.
Do you tell them that?
I sometimes, yeah. Because I talk about a lot about the importance of being able to have tough conversations, being able to be known to each other. And I mean, I'll just give you one scenario in terms of being known to each other. The person who had the affair, there were reasons they had the affair, and they may not even know them all at the beginning. And so taking the time to explore what did the affair mean, what are the reasons, all of that is pretty important. For the other partner, there may be a lot of self-examination if they did play a role. Let's say it's a very conflict-avoidant marriage. Okay, when did you start shutting down? Why did you start shutting down? Are you going to take risks that you've never taken before with this person? So there's that kind of self-examination again with that partner. One of a recent conversation that I had with a couple was, which is challenging, but I see this as really, really a good conversation for them, is he wanted to see the woman that he was having an affair, he had had the affair with. The affair had gone on for almost 3 years. He wanted to see her. He wanted to have lunch with her. And there were a lot of reasons why he wasn't finished. And they had to have a conversation about why he wasn't finished and what the meaning would be of the lunch that he was going to have with her and what he was going to tell his wife afterwards. And, you know, that's not easy. Also, they had a conversation about what the other woman had meant to him. And, you know, she had meant a lot of positive things to him. So his wife was able to listen to the positive things the other woman meant to him. Anyway, so the third stage. Yeah, the third stage is really the stage of deciding what's our contract with each other now. You know, number one, of course, is are we going to stay married or not? But then in the context of staying married, are we recommitting to a contract of monogamy? And I like to help couples recommit to a contract of honesty. So the honesty is, if I want to have an affair again, would I tell you first? Would you be the first to know before I ever did anything?
What I'm liking about what you're saying and sort of overarching this is that I think respectfully a lot of people in our professions tend to, maybe it's our own issues that are coming up or whatever, but we tend to, with affairs, I think, see it through our own eyes. So if I'm somebody that believes in open marriage and this couple comes in devastated, can I see it through their eyes? If I'm somebody that believes I'm very strong monogamy or death kind of commitment, and somebody comes in with an affair, it's easy to go, moralistic on them. So it's just sort of interesting. What I hear you saying is you're keeping all of that out of it. And you're saying, what does the couple want? What are they capable of? Are they willing to do the work to achieve the outcome that they want? Is that right?
Yes, and I'm saying, can I, as a therapist, hold two realities? Because that's exactly what I'm asking them to do. Can they hold and can they work with me through a process where they hold the reality of the person who feels very hurt, very wounded, doesn't know if they can or want to recover? Can they hold that reality, and can the partner who created that mess really empathize with that? Can they get to a place where they really understand the psychic devastation that they've caused?
And it's funny that you just said the partner that created that mess, because it that may it may not have been just one partner that created the mess, right? It's just the person that lit the fuse.
Well, I'm talking about specifically now the partner who lied and deceived and, who created the disruption in that equilateral contract.
Got it.
But and sometimes they really can't. I mean, sometimes you're talking about somebody on the narcissistic sociopathic continuum who's never had real empathy for somebody else's feelings. And then the fact that they, in the therapy, can get to really having to bear witness to what they did help to create can be an enormous part of the work with them.
So if the stats are right, and it's 50+% of people that have had affairs, we therapists ought to watch.
No. It's 50% of marriages, which is different.
Excuse me, 50% of marriages that have had affairs. We as therapists ought to watch our countertransference.
Yeah, and I mean, it's in one way, what I like about infidelity cases is it pushes the therapist's development. I mean, in any case, our best tack is to be able to hold two realities and even hold two different roles with each person if they want us to perform a different role for them.
Right.
So the therapist is stretched. And
so if you've got two people in the room and one says, I'd like your role to be to get us back together, and the other says, I'd like your role to help me leave the marriage, are you suggesting that?
I've had that several times.
And you can hold both of those in there?
Yes. You want me to talk about how?
I do.
Okay. So first off, I say to the partner.
Wait, I noticed my body language. I went like that right when you said it. I put my hands on. I do. Go ahead.
Well, so let's say the partner, first of all, who wants to save the marriage. I will say to them, I am willing to work with you to do whatever I think and you think it will take to be able to save this marriage. And I don't know what that is yet because I just met you, but I can play a role where I use my experience, my knowledge, all of that from other situations to help you do what might indeed save the marriage. The partner who wants to end the marriage, I'll say to them, first of all, are you here to end this marriage responsibly? And assuming they say yes, then I say, so that's going to be a process. It's, you just surprised your husband or wife with this news. And if you want to end the marriage well, I can help you do the things that you need to do to be able to end the marriage well. But that's going to mean some stress. I mean, it's going to mean, but I'll help you with that as well.
And then that's when you get them having those difficult conversations?
Well, and in a way, it's almost like two parallel individual therapies initially, because I'm helping the one person look at their role in it and see what they might do to save it. I'm helping the other person look at what would it take to end the marriage and to end the marriage in a good, responsible way, if that's really what their intention is. And after that, they begin to have conversations, but they both need more clarity before they're really in a good place to talk back and forth.
Well, I leave it to you and your couples therapist, ELlyn.
I actually like this kind. I mean, I like it, like I said, not because of the pain, but I like it because of how motivating it is.
Yeah, you're not getting the same old last week's story in this kind of therapy.
No, there's a lot going on.
Well, thank you. And we'll put the links under the video in the Resource Center. But I wanted to ask you one more thing. At this conference, I'm trying to do things a little bit different, and that is give the audience members a peek behind the curtain into some of the lives of our presenters. And one of the things that I heard about you was school and Africa. And I would love to know a little bit more about that if you're willing to share.
Of course, because this is my other passion. So I'm involved with an organization called World Teacher Aid, and their mission is to build schools in Africa, or in Africa primarily. And last summer I went and helped to build the first school, which is in a camp for it's called an IDP camp, which stands for Internally Displaced People. And these are people who lost, due to tribal violence and political violence, they lost everything. They lost their homes, they lost their communities, sometimes they lost, their fathers, their mothers, their siblings. And so the government just picked them all up and moved them onto a plot of land. And they were given one thing, which was a tin roof.
Wow.
And so they started over. When we got there, it had been already 3.5 years. So these kids had not been in school for 3.5 years. And we built the elementary school last summer, finished building it last summer. It was really fun to be there. And I was like drawing the alphabet on the blackboard, painting ABCs, painting it because they didn't have paintbrushes. I'm painting it with twigs.
Wow.
But we built a school with 8 classrooms, 1st through 8th grade, and an administration building. And then this coming summer, I'm going back to help build a high school in the same area, because it became very clear last summer that it's not enough, obviously, to get these kids through 8th grade. You got to get them at least through high school and probably beyond that as well. Mm-hmm. One of the staggering things to me, Casey, there is that it's probably gone up a little bit since then, but $1 will feed a child a healthy protein meal at lunchtime at school for a whole month.
Wow.
And so that's another thing. When I came back, I started raising money for the feeding program as well.
Wow.
So, I just say I encourage anybody who has the potential to be a donor to consider coming with us. It's a life-changing experience. Actually, Pete and I we did a video about it too, which people can look at couplesinstitute.com/Kenya, or get in touch with me, because it will change your life. It was just amazing to me, the amount of trauma that these people have been through, and the loving community they've created, the welcoming of us, the amount of physical touch, the amount of emotionality, was just absolutely staggering.
What was the biggest thing that you learned about yourself?
That's a hard one to answer, actually, because it was the fulfillment of a dream for me. I'd always wanted to do something like this, and I had done some work in Indonesia many years ago for a little while, and I always wanted to do more. So it was a confirmation to me that this is one of my callings in life, and it's something I want to do. I think another thing that was just incredible was to talk to some of these kids. I totally fell in love with one girl who's 13, and she wants to be a kidney surgeon.
Wow.
When here she is, she's having to go back. When she lost her school, she was 10. So she's got to go back all the way to the 4th grade and start. And I think she can do it, with help. But but she really, I bet one day she's going to be a kidney surgeon.
Are you allowed to stay in touch with them, or do they discourage that? Or
no, you can, and I am. I actually, for a small way of helping in between, I've given the money for her mother to finish. Her mother had actually started a degree in child development at the time that everything fell apart. And so she's never been able to go back. So I just gave the money recently for her mother to finish her degree. And I plan to stay in touch. Her name's Cynthia. I plan to stay in touch with her for a long time.
Are they in any danger now?
Not currently that I know of. There are elections again this summer, which will be the first time since that occurred. but the area where they should be okay. And I mean, I'm doing something in one village. There's maybe 500 kids in this village, but there's 600,000 people that affected.
Wow.
So it's a drop in the bucket.
Wow.
But well, I have to tell you one other thing. Because this shows you the difference between their culture and our culture. We had a big celebration the last day we were there to celebrate the opening of the school, and the chief of police and one of the politicians, who would be like a congressman here, stood through the whole ceremony holding hands.
Wow.
And I mean, I have a PowerPoint slide that I sometimes show of them holding hands, but and we saw a lot of man-to-man physical contact.
Yeah.
And you know what would happen to the political career of somebody here if anybody saw that.
Yeah.
And yet, as therapists, we know the importance of physical touch.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
And we're going to have you on in just a minute to take some questions.
Okie doke.
Okay. Thanks, ELlyn.
Thank you, Casey.